The great station hung in the darkness of space, like a massive wheel of light. Consensus Prime had been the home of the Galactic Council for 300 years. Today, representatives from 247 different worlds gathered in its main chamber. The room was enormous, with seats rising in circular tiers around a central platform. Beings of every shape and size filled those seats. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, a few were made of living crystal. At the center platform stood Velrith, the council chair. He was Talnary tall and thin, with silver skin that shimmered under the lights. His 4 eyes scanned the chamber as he called the session to order. The sound of hundreds of translators hummed softly as his words became understandable to every species present. The 247th session is now open, Velrith announced. His voice carried weight and frustration. We have much to discuss. Trade disputes between the Kryn Federation and the Toral Collective, territorial concerns along the Outer Rim, and of course, the continuing absence of Earth. At the mention of Earth, several representatives made sounds of annoyance. The seat marked for humanity had been empty for 50 years. 50 years since first contact. 50 years since Earth had demonstrated their first faster-than-light ship and been granted council membership. 50 years of silence. Ambassador Deho from the Kryn Federation stood up. He was one of the few humanoid species in the council, though his blue skin and 3-fingered hands set him apart from humans. Perhaps Earth has gone extinct, he said with a laugh. It would not be the first time a primitive world destroyed itself before reaching true civilization. Some in the chamber laughed. Others remained silent. Velrith did not smile. The matter of Earth is more troubling than amusing, Ambassador Deho. They were given membership. They accepted. Then they simply stopped responding to all communication. This is unprecedented. A young woman stood from the observation deck. Her name was Marae. She worked as a junior analyst aboard the research vessel Eternal Query. She had requested permission to speak at this session, though few paid attention to junior researchers. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she carried a data tablet in her hands. "Honored Council," she said, her voice slightly nervous. "I have been studying the Earth situation for the past year. My findings are concerning." Velrith gestured for her to continue. Marae activated her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the central platform. It showed the Sol System, Earth's home. "We have sent 143 automated probes to Sol System over the past 50 years. Not one has returned. Not one has sent back data. They simply disappear. Equipment failure," someone called out from the upper tiers. "That was my first thought," Marae replied. "But the probability of 143 consecutive failures is essentially 0. I believe Earth has established some kind of defensive perimeter around their system. Something that destroys or captures anything that approaches." This caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Deho stood again. "You're suggesting that Earth, a world that barely discovered hyperspace travel 50 years ago, has technology sophisticated enough to destroy our probes without leaving any trace?" "That's absurd." Marae's jaw tightened. "I'm not suggesting they destroyed them without trace. I'm suggesting we don't know what happened to them because we can't get close enough to find out." "There's a difference," Velrith said, raising one hand. "The question remains, what do we do about Earth? They have violated every principle of council membership. They refuse communication. They refuse diplomacy. They refuse to participate in galactic affairs." An elder from the Toral Collective spoke up. His voice was like grinding stones. "Revoke their membership. Mark their system as restricted. If they wish to hide in their corner of space, let them. We have more important matters." "I agree," said another representative. "Earth has made their choice. They want nothing to do with us. Why should we waste resources on them?" Velrith looked troubled but nodded slowly. "Very well. We will vote on revoking Earth's council membership at the next session in 6 months. If they do not respond by then, we will assume they have abandoned galactic society entirely." The rest of the session continued with debates about trade and resources. Marae returned to her seat, frustrated that no one seemed to take her concerns seriously. She looked at the data on her tablet. The pattern was clear to her, even if others couldn't see it. Earth wasn't hiding in fear. They were hiding something after the session ended. Ray walked through the station's long corridors back to her quarters. The walls were transparent in places, showing the vast darkness of space beyond. She paused at one viewport and stared at the distant stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. What were they doing? What were they planning? She didn't have to wait long for an answer. 2 days later, alarms sounded throughout Consensus Prime. Every analyst and researcher rushed to their stations. A perimeter monitoring station at the edge of Sol System had detected something. Massive energy signatures. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Myra pulled up the data on her workstation. Her hands shook slightly as she read the numbers. The energy signatures were consistent with large vessels. Very large vessels. But that was impossible. Earth didn't have that kind of fleet. They couldn't have built it in 50 years. She enhanced the sensor data, trying to get a clearer picture. The readings showed ship after ship, all in formation. All moving slowly toward the edge of Sol System's defensive perimeter. Whatever Earth had been doing for 50 years, they were getting ready to show the galaxy. The monitoring station sent one final transmission. A visual feed appeared on Marae's screen. She gasped. Even at extreme range, she could see them. Ships. Warships. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in what looked like armor plating. They bristled with weapons. And there were so many of them, the feed suddenly went dark. The monitoring station had been destroyed or disabled. Myra sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She had been right. Earth had been preparing something, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. She immediately sent a priority message to the Council. They needed to see this data. Earth wasn't extinct. Earth wasn't cowering in fear. Earth had spent 50 years building an armada. The question was why? And more importantly, what did they plan to do with it? As Marae compiled her report, she felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The galaxy was about to meet humanity again. But this time, Earth wasn't asking for permission to join. They were announcing their presence. And from the look of those ships, they were ready for whatever came next. In the darkness of space, the human fleet continued to gather. Silent, waiting, watching. Their time was coming. 6 months had passed since Marae detected the human fleet. The Galactic Council had reviewed her findings, but decided they had more urgent problems. The Void Swarm had arrived at the outer colonies of the Kryn Federation. Fleet, Admiral Taijin, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Warrior's Pride. Through the view screen, he watched his homeworld's colony of New Kryn die. The swarm ships moved like insects, thousands of them swarming over the planet's surface. They were biological vessels, grown rather than built, with hulls that looked like black metal mixed with organic tissue. Each ship varied in size, from small fighters to massive capital ships the size of cities. "Admiral, we need to retreat," his second officer said urgently. "We've lost 60% of our fleet. We can't hold them." Taijin's blue hands gripped the armrest of his command chair. His 3 fingers dug into the material. "Order all ships to fall back to defensive line Gamma. Evacuate what civilians we can and abandon New Kryn." It hurt to say those words. New Kryn had been home to 15 million Kryn citizens. Now it would be consumed. The swarm didn't just destroy planets, they converted them. Broke down all matter and reformed it into more swarm ships, more swarm organisms. A planet that took billions of years to form could be consumed in weeks. The retreat was chaos. Swarm fighters pursued the fleeing Kryn vessels. Their weapons were living things that burrowed into whole armor and ate through it like acid. Taijin watched 3 more ships explode before they reached the jump point. When they finally escaped into hyperspace, he had lost over half his fleet in a single battle. Back at Consensus Prime, the Council met in emergency session. Velrith looked older now, more tired. The weight of leadership during a crisis was visible on his silver face. "Fleet Admiral Taijin will report on the situation." Taijin's holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. Even through the projection, his exhaustion was clear. "Honored Council, the Void Swarm has breached our outer defenses. We have lost 7 colony worlds in 3 months. Our fleets cannot stop them. Their ships adapt to our weapons. What kills them today doesn't work tomorrow. They learn. They evolve. And they never stop coming. What do you need? Asked Ambassador Deho. He looked shaken. The Kryn Federation was his people, and they were dying. Everything, Taijin replied bluntly. Ships, weapons, supplies. I need the combined might of the Council's military forces, and I need them now. If we don't stop the swarm at the Kryn border, they will spread across the entire galaxy. Debate erupted. Some species wanted to help. Others worried about leaving their own space undefended. Old grudges surfaced. The Toro Collective reminded everyone that the Kryn had refused to help them during a pirate crisis 20 years ago. Others complained about the cost of mobilizing fleets across such distances. Murray watched from the analyst section, disgusted. The galaxy was facing extinction, and they were arguing about politics and money. She had been promoted after her Earth report, now working directly for the Council's Strategic Assessment Division. Her superior, Director Hyunwoo, was a serious man with sharp eyes and little patience for incompetence. Array Hyunwoo called to her after the session. I want you to analyze swarm attack patterns. Find me something we can use. She worked for 3 days straight, reviewing every battle, every encounter. The swarm seemed random at first, but Murray saw something others missed. She pulled up a galactic map and marked every world the swarm had attacked. Then she overlaid the Council's public database. It's the one that listed all member worlds and their coordinates. The match was perfect. Every single world attacked by the swarm was listed in that database. Not similar coordinates. Exact coordinates. Murray's blood ran cold. She ran the analysis 3 more times to be sure. Then she brought it to Director Hyunwoo. Sir, I think our database has been compromised, she said, showing him the data. The swarm isn't randomly attacking. They're following our own records. Someone or something has given them access to Council systems. Hyunwoo studied the data for a long moment. Then he shook his head. That's a serious accusation, Murray. Do you understand what you're suggesting? That we have a traitor in the Council? Or that our security has been breached for possibly decades? I know what I'm suggesting, sir. But the pattern is undeniable. Pattern doesn't equal proof, Hyunwoo said, though he looked troubled. It could be coincidence. The Council database lists the most developed, resource-rich worlds. The swarm might naturally target those, with exact coordinates. Sir, the probability, I understand probability. Hyunwoo cut her off. But I need absolute proof before I take this to the Council. Until then, keep investigating quietly. Murray left his office frustrated but determined. She knew she was right. The question was how to prove it. Meanwhile, the Council finally voted to send reinforcement fleets to the Kryn Federation. It was too little, too late. By the time the ships arrived, the swarm had consumed 3 more worlds. Taijin combined forces with the Council fleets and managed a few victories, but they were temporary. The swarm kept coming. On the final day of the 6-month period, the Council reconvened. The primary topic was Earth. Velrith looked even more exhausted than before. We must now vote on revoking Earth's membership. They have ignored every attempt at contact. They have violated every principle of Council participation. All in favor? The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a handful abstained. Ambassador Deho cast his vote with visible regret. I wish it were different, he said. But a civilization that refuses communication cannot be part of a community. The motion passes, Velrith declared. Earth's membership is revoked. The Sol system is hereby marked as quarantined and restricted. No Council vessel is to approach without explicit authorization, which will not be granted. The session was about to end when alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency signals flooded every console. Velrith's 4 eyes went wide as he read the incoming reports. The swarm, he whispered. They've jumped into the Talnary home system. Chaos erupted. Representatives screamed and shouted. The Talnary were one of the founding species of the Council. Their homeworld was one of the most heavily populated in the galaxy. If it fell, billions would die. Every available ship was ordered to Talnary Prime. Taijin's fleet was already in motion. but they were days away. The home defense fleet would have to hold until reinforcements arrived. Reports came in of massive swarm formations dropping out of hyperspace. This wasn't a raiding party. This was an invasion force meant to break the Council entirely. Mireille sat at her workstation, watching the battle unfold through sensor data. The Talnari were fighting hard, but it wasn't enough. The swarm was too strong, too numerous. She thought about her data, about the pattern she'd discovered. Someone had led the swarm here. Someone had marked Talnari Prime for death. Her console beeped. An incoming message on an old communication channel. She frowned and opened it. The channel was one of the original frequencies Earth had used during first contact 50 years ago. Nobody used it anymore. The message was text only. Simple words that made her heart race. "We see you. We're coming." Mireille stared at the screen. Earth. After 50 years of silence, Earth was responding. But what did it mean? Were they coming to help? Or was this a threat? She forwarded the message to Director Hyunwoo and the Council immediately. Whatever Earth intended, they were about to find out. The Battle of Talnari Prime was going badly. Admiral Taijin's fleet had arrived from Kryn space, but even combined with the home defense forces, they were being overwhelmed. The swarm had brought everything. Millions of bioships filled the space around the planet, so many that they blocked out the stars. Taijin watched another cruiser explode on his view screen. The swarm's adaptive shielding had already adjusted to most of their weapons. Energy beams that worked yesterday barely scratched them today. Kinetic rounds were absorbed by their organic hulls. The Talnari homeworld's orbital stations were falling one by one. "Admiral, we need to evacuate the planet," his tactical officer said. "We can't win this." "We hold as long as we can," Taijin replied grimly. "Every minute we fight is another 1,000 civilians evacuated." Then space tore open. It wasn't a normal hyperspace exit. This was different. Massive ruptures appeared in space itself, glowing white and blue. Taijin's sensors went crazy with energy readings. Then the ships came through. 1,000 warships emerged in perfect formation. Taijin had never seen vessels like these. They were human ships. That much was clear from the database tags. But they looked nothing like the primitive craft Earth had shown the galaxy 50 years ago. These were warships in the truest sense. Their hulls were angular and dark, covered in armor plating that seemed to drink in light. Weapons bristled from every surface, and they moved with precision that suggested advanced AI coordination. At the center of the formation was the largest ship, the indomitable Dawn. It was 3 kilometers long, shaped like a sword blade, with massive engines that glowed blue-white. On its bridge stood Fleet Admiral Jiwan. She was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was simple, practical, military. She stood with her hands behind her back, watching the tactical display that showed the entire battle space. "All ships, weapons free," she said calmly. "Target priority, swarm capital organisms, fire." Human fleet opened fire, and the galaxy learned what real weapons looked like. Railguns. Accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Each round carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. When they hit swarm ships, the biovessels simply exploded. There was no adaptation, no evolution fast enough to handle physics at that scale. Plasma lances burned with temperatures matching the surface of stars. They cut through swarm formations like a hot knife through butter. Energy beams that somehow bypassed shields entirely and destroyed ships from the inside out. But the most terrifying weapons were the ones nobody could identify. Beams of pale light that made swarm ships simply cease to exist. No explosion, no debris. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if they'd been erased from reality. Taijin watched in stunned silence as the human fleet carved through the swarm. It's like they were nothing. Formations that had taken hours to break apart fell in minutes. The swarm's adaptive abilities meant nothing against weapons operating on principles they couldn't adapt to. On the indomitable Dawn, Guan monitored the battle with professional calm. "Status. 60% of Swarm Vanguard destroyed, her tactical officer reported. Remaining forces attempting to retreat. Don't let them, Giwan said simply. I want total elimination. No survivors to report back. Yes, Admiral. Marae watched from her observation ship, her hands shaking as she analyzed the data. The human ships were using technology generations ahead of anything in the Council database. Their power generation alone was impossible by current understanding. Their weapons drew energy from sources she couldn't identify, and their coordination was perfect, suggesting computer systems more advanced than anything the galaxy possessed. In 3 hours, it was over. Every single swarm ship in the Talnari system was destroyed. The human fleet moved through the debris field, salvaged drones collecting every piece of swarm material. They weren't taking chances. Total elimination meant nothing left behind. When the last swarm ship fell, Juan opened a channel to the Council fleet. Her face appeared on view screens throughout the Allied vessels. She looked directly at the camera and spoke in clear, unaccented galactic common. This is Fleet Admiral Juan of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are here to end the swarm threat. Silence hung in space. Every being who heard those words understood their weight. Earth hadn't come to ask for help. Earth had come to provide it. On Consensus Prime, Velrith watched the transmission with his 4 eyes wide. Around him, the Emergency Council session sat in absolute silence. Earth had just saved the Talnari homeworld, saved billions of lives. With ease, Taijin was the first to respond. He opened a channel from his flagship. Fleet Admiral G1. This is Admiral Taijin of the Kryn Defense Forces. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you for your assistance. Admiral Taijin, Giwan replied with a slight nod. Your people fought bravely. The Kryn losses during this conflict have not gone unnoticed by Earth. If I may ask, Taijin continued, his voice uncertain, where has Earth been these past 50 years? Giwan's expression remained neutral. Preparing for what? For this? For the swarm? For what comes next? Velrith's voice came through, transmitted from Consensus Prime. Admiral Juan, this is Council Chair Velrith. Earth has been absent from galactic affairs for 5 decades. You ignored every communication, every summons. We revoked your membership just today. Now you appear with a military force that exceeds anything we've ever seen. You must understand our confusion. I understand perfectly, Chair Velrith, Giwan replied, and I apologize for any offense caused by our silence. But Earth made a choice 50 years ago, and we stand by it. When we detected the swarm, we realized the galaxy wasn't ready, so we got ready instead. You could have warned us, Ambassador Deho's voice cut in. We could have prepared together. With respect, Ambassador, 50 years ago, Earth had barely achieved faster than light travel. We had nothing to offer but warnings based on distant sensor readings. Would you have listened? The silence that followed answered the question. No, they wouldn't have, G1 continued. Earth chose a different path. We went dark. We isolated ourselves. We built. And now we're here, with the tools needed to end this threat. What do you want? Velrith asked carefully. Why help us now? Because the swarm won't stop with the Council, Giwan said. They'll consume everything in the galaxy if left unchecked. And because, despite everything, we're still human. We don't abandon others to extinction when we have the power to prevent it. She paused, then added, I'm requesting a meeting with the full Galactic Council. Not a request to rejoin. Not a petition for membership. A meeting between equals to discuss how we end the swarm threat permanently. Velrith looked around the council chamber. He saw shock on every face. Fear on some. Hope on others. Earth wasn't asking permission. They were announcing their presence as a power to be reckoned with. The council will convene in 3 days, Velrith said finally. We will hear what Earth has to say. Thank you, Chair Velrith. We'll be there. The transmission ended. The human fleet maintained position in Talnari space, weapons still charged, ready for anything. They didn't ask permission to stay. They simply stayed. Marae pulled up every sensor reading she had from the battle. This changed everything. Earth wasn't the primitive world they'd dismissed. Earth was potentially the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. And they'd been hiding that power for 50 years, the question everyone was asking. Now was simple. What else had Earth been hiding? The Emergency Council session was the most attended in galactic history. Every representative was present, and the gallery was packed with observers, analysts, and military personnel. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a blade. Earth's seat was no longer empty. Ambassador Salmon sat there with perfect posture, her dark eyes scanning the room with calm calculation. She was a woman who seemed to see everything, miss nothing. Her diplomatic bearing was flawless, but there was steel underneath the polished exterior. Flanking her were military advisors in crisp uniforms and several scientists, including Dr. Ginho, a man in his 40s with tired eyes and the bearing of someone who had spent too many years staring at terrible things. Valrith called the session to order. His silver skin seemed to have lost some of its shimmer over the past weeks. The stress of leadership during crisis was wearing him down. Ambassador Soman, the Council recognizes Earth. You requested this meeting. We're listening. Soman stood smoothly and walked to the central platform. She carried a data tablet, but didn't look at it. She knew exactly what she needed to say. Honored Council members, thank you for this opportunity. I know Earth's absence has caused confusion and frustration. I'm here to explain why we made the choices we did. She activated her tablet, and a holographic display filled the center of the chamber. It showed deep space, star fields, and sensor readings. 50 years ago, Earth achieved faster-than-light travel. We sent exploration probes in every direction, eager to learn what was out there. One of those probes detected unusual energy signatures near the galactic rim. We sent more probes to investigate. Display showed swarm ships. Millions of them, moving through space like a living wave. We discovered the Void Swarm. More importantly, we intercepted their communications. We spent months analyzing their patterns, their movements, their targeting, and we made a disturbing discovery. The display changed to show a galactic map with marked coordinates. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. The swarm wasn't moving randomly. They were following a specific path, targeting specific worlds. Worlds listed in the Galactic Council's public database. Impossible, someone shouted from the upper tiers. Summon's expression didn't change. I thought so too, Ambassador. But the data doesn't lie. Dr. Jinho, please share your findings. Dr. Jinho stood and approached the platform. He looked uncomfortable in front of so many people, but his voice was steady when he spoke. I've spent 20 years studying swarm biology and behavior. The swarm isn't a natural phenomenon. They're a weapon, created by an extinct civilization as a final act of destruction. They're programmed to seek out and consume advanced civilizations, but they need targeting data. They need coordinates. He expanded the holographic display. Analysis of captured swarm communications shows embedded coordinate data that exactly matches the Council's public database. Not approximate. Exact. Down to the decimal point. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted denials, accusations, questions. Velrith banged his gavel repeatedly to restore order. You're saying our own systems have been compromised? Velrith demanded. For decades, possibly centuries, Salman confirmed. We don't know how or when. But yes, your communication networks have been feeding targeting data to the swarm. Ambassador Deho stood, his blue face flushed darker with anger or embarrassment. This is an extraordinary claim. Where's your proof? Murray stood from the analyst section. I can provide independent confirmation. All eyes turned to her. 6 months ago, I identified the same pattern Ambassador Salman describes. Every world attacked by the swarm was listed in our public database. I reported this to my superiors, but the evidence was considered insufficient. Director Hyunwoo looked uncomfortable, but nodded. Analyst Murray did present this theory. At the time, I felt the pattern could be explained by the swarm naturally targeting developed worlds. But combined with Earth's evidence, the conclusion is undeniable. Why didn't Earth warn us? Asked a Toral representative. If you knew this 50 years ago, Why stay silent? Solomon turned to face the speaker. Because 50 years ago, Earth was weak. We had just achieved basic FTL travel. We had no credibility, no standing in galactic politics. We detected a threat based on distant sensor readings and intercepted transmissions. If we had come to the Council then, claiming your systems were compromised and a vast enemy was approaching, would you have believed us? The silence that followed was damning. No, they wouldn't have believed. They would have dismissed Earth as paranoid newcomers who didn't understand galactic affairs. So we made a different choice, Solomon continued. We cut all external communications. We built a defensive perimeter around Sol system that nothing could penetrate. We destroyed or captured every probe that approached. And we prepared? Prepared how? Admiral Taijin asked. He had been given special permission to attend the session after his performance at Talnari Prime. Admiral Juwan stood from where she'd been seated near the human delegation. Total mobilization. We turned our entire civilization into a war machine. Every resource, every facility. Every mind focused on a single goal, developing the weapons and technology needed to defeat the swarm. She walked to the platform and stood beside Solomon. We built shipyards in asteroid belts and on dead moons. We constructed manufacturing facilities on every planet in our system. We developed new power sources, new weapons, new ship designs. We trained crews for vessels that didn't exist yet. We ran simulations of battles we hoped would never happen. We succeeded, Dr. Jinho added quietly. We solved problems the galaxy has struggled with for centuries. Adaptive shielding, quantum weapons, AI coordination systems. We didn't do it through genius. We did it through necessity and desperation. Let that sink in before continuing. Earth isolated itself, not out of arrogance or fear, but out of pragmatism. We needed time, and we couldn't risk the swarm detecting our preparations. Every signal we sent, every communication, could have alerted them. So we went silent. Why reveal yourselves now? Velrith asked. Why not stay hidden until the swarm was defeated? Because the swarm reached Talnari Prime, Juwan replied. Because you were losing. Because despite everything, we're still human. And we don't stand by while billions die when we have the power to prevent it. The chamber fell silent. It was Deho who finally spoke, his voice subdued. What do you want from us, Ambassador Salmon? Nothing, Solomon replied. And everything. We're not here to ask for favors or demand tribute. We're here to offer partnership. Earth has the weapons to fight the swarm. But we need your intelligence networks, your knowledge of the galaxy, your resources. Together, we can end this threat permanently. And if we refuse? Someone asked. Giwan's expression hardened. Then Earth will fight the swarm alone, and you'll be on your own when they come for your worlds. But I don't think you'll refuse. You've seen what we can do. You've seen what the swarm can do. The choice is clear. Velrith looked around the chamber. He saw fear on some faces, anger on others, but mostly he saw hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. The Council needs time to discuss this matter, Velrith said. But speaking personally, I believe we would be fools to reject Earth's offer. You saved Talnari Prime. You saved my people. For that alone, you have my gratitude. With respect, Chair Velrith, we don't need gratitude, Solomon said. We need commitment. The swarm has a central nexus, a controlling intelligence. Dr. Jinho has located it. We have a plan to destroy it, but it will require the combined fleets of Earth and the Council. It will be dangerous. Many will die. But it's the only way to end this permanently. How soon? Taijin asked. We move in 2 weeks, Guan replied. That gives us time to coordinate, share intelligence, and prepare. After that, we strike the Nexus with everything we have. The Council members looked at each other. 2 weeks to prepare for the most important battle in galactic history. 2 weeks to decide if they would follow Earth into the fire. Velrith stood. The Council will vote tomorrow on formal alliance with Earth. I suspect I know how that vote will go. In the meantime, all military forces are to coordinate with Admiral Giwan. All intelligence agencies will share data with Earth's delegation. We are at war, and we will fight it together. As the session ended, Murray approached the human delegation. Salman smiled at her. Analyst Murray, your work identifying the pattern was excellent. We were hoping someone on the council side would notice. Could have just told us, Murray said. Could have, Salman agreed. But it's better if you discovered it yourselves. More believable. More compelling? Murray realized she'd been played, but she couldn't be angry. Earth had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. They'd prepared for every possibility, planned for every contingency. In 50 years of silence, they'd become something the galaxy had never seen, truly ready for war. The combined fleet gathered at the Kryn border, just outside swarm-controlled space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 1,000 human warships stood alongside 5,000 council vessels from 200 different worlds. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers, a wall of metal and energy ready to strike. On the bridge of the indomitable Dawn, Admiral Giwan reviewed the battle plan one final time. The holographic display showed the target. The Swarm Nexus, a massive organic structure hidden deep in consumed territory. It had once been a planet, but the Swarm had converted it into something else. A living command center that controlled every swarm ship in the galaxy. The plan is simple, Giwan explained to the assembled fleet commanders via holographic conference. The main fleet engages the Swarm Armada here. She pointed to a position 3 star systems away from the Nexus. You'll be outnumbered 10 to 1. Your job is to hold their attention and keep them busy. While you do what, exactly? Asked a Toral captain. While my assault team penetrates the Nexus and destroys it from within, replied Captain Yunji. She was younger than most of the commanders, but her record was flawless. G1 trusted her absolutely, and commanded the Silent Promise, a stealth carrier designed specifically for this mission. It was smaller than most capital ships, but packed with advanced cloaking technology and carried an assault team of Earth's best soldiers and scientists. The main fleet doesn't need to win, G1 continued. You just need to survive long enough for us to complete the mission. Once the Nexus falls, every swarm ship will lose coordination. They'll be easy targets. And if you fail, Admiral Taijin asked quietly. Then we all die, Giwan said bluntly. But we won't fail. The Council of Commanders looked at each other. Some seemed doubtful, others determined. Velrith, attending via hologram from Consensus Prime, spoke up. Admiral Giwan, the Council has authorized me to lead our forces personally. I will command the Council contingent. With respect, Chair Velrith, your place is at Consensus Prime, Giwan replied. My place is with my people, fighting for our survival, Velrith corrected. I have spent too long behind a desk, making decisions that send others to die. This time, I fight alongside them. Giwan studied him for a moment, then nodded. Understood. You'll coordinate with Admiral Tijin's forces on the left flank. Ambassador Deho's image flickered into the conference. My Federation has committed every available ship. We've lost too many worlds to the Swarm. This ends today, one way or another. Agreed, said a dozen other voices. Murray sat at her station aboard the Silent Promise. She had requested assignment to the assault team, citing her extensive knowledge of swarm behavior patterns. G1 had approved immediately. Now, as they prepared to launch, Murray checked her equipment for the 10th time. She wore light armor and carried a sidearm, though she hoped she wouldn't need it. Dr. Ginho worked beside her, preparing the quantum cascade weapon. It looked deceptively simple, a device about the size of a large briefcase, but it contained enough destructive power to unravel the Nexus's biocomputational matrix at a fundamental level. Are you scared? Murray asked him. Ginho smiled slightly. Terrified. But this is what I've been working toward for 20 years. If we succeed, the swarm ends. Every life lost, every sacrifice made during Earth's preparation will have meant something. And if we fail, then at least we tried. The fleet moved into position. The Silent Promise detached from the main formation and activated its cloaking systems. On the ship's view screen, Murray watched as the massive fleet jumped into hyperspace. Heading for the ambush point, the Battle of the Swarm Nexus began 3 hours later. The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly into the middle of the swarm armada. Millions of bioships filled the space around them. The fighting was immediate and brutal. Taijin's warriors. Pride led the Kryn contingent straight into the thickest part of the swarm. His ships fought with desperate courage, taking terrible losses but holding the line. Beside them, Velrith's dreadnought Unity's shield carved through swarm formations with concentrated fire. All ships maintain formation, Taijin ordered as explosions blossomed around him. Don't let them break through. We need to give Captain Yunji time. The human warships demonstrated their superior firepower, but even they were struggling against such overwhelming numbers. For every swarm ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The bioships learned and adapted with terrifying speed. Daeho watched from his command ship, coordinating the Federation's carrier groups. He saw ships dying by the dozens. Friends he'd known for decades were snuffed out in explosions of light and metal, but they held, because they had to. The silent promise slipped through the chaos like a ghost. Its cloaking systems rendered it nearly invisible, and the swarm was too focused on the main fleet to notice one small ship. Captain Youngji guided them through the bioship formations with surgical precision. Approaching the Nexus, she reported, "It's bigger than we thought." The Nexus filled the view screen. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Its surface pulsed with organic tissue mixed with metallic structures. Thousands of tendrils extended from it, each one connected to nearby swarm ships. It was beautiful in a horrifying way, a perfect fusion of biology and technology. Finding an entry point, Yonji muttered, scanning the surface. There, a large opening that looked like a docking bay. She guided the silent promise toward it. The interior of the Nexus was like flying through the veins of a massive creature. The walls were organic, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Smaller swarm organisms moved along the walls, performing maintenance or construction. The silent promise's weapons took them out silently. "We need to reach the core," Dr. Jinho said, studying his scans. "That's where the controlling intelligence resides." They flew deeper into the structure. The passages grew narrower, more complex. Mireille used her knowledge of swarm behavior to predict which paths led toward the core. She'd studied their architecture for years. Now that knowledge was keeping them alive. Outside, the main battle was reaching its peak. Taijin's flagship took a direct hit that destroyed half its hull. He ordered the crew to abandon ship and transferred command to a nearby cruiser. Velrith's dreadnought rammed a swarm capital organism to save 3 smaller vessels, crippling his own ship in the process. "How much longer?" Velrith demanded over the command channel. His ship was dying around him, systems failing one by one. "We're almost there," Yunji replied. The silent promise burst into the central chamber. The core was a massive, pulsing structure, a brain of organic tissue and crystal formations that glowed with inner light. This was it. The heart of the swarm. "Setting up the weapon," Dr. Jinho said, working quickly. But as he connected the final components, the device sparked and died. No, what's wrong?" Yonji demanded. "Automated systems failed. I need to arm it manually." Jinho looked at the others. "And someone needs to stay to ensure detonation. The timing has to be perfect." "We can program it," Mireille said desperately. "There's no time," Jinho replied calmly. He was already working on the manual override. "Get back to the ship. I'll trigger it when you're clear." "Doctor, that's not an option," Yunji began. "It's the only option, Captain." Jinho smiled at them. "Go. Tell Earth we kept our promise. Tell them the swarm ends today." Mireille felt tears on her face. "Thank you, Dr. Jinho. Thank you, Analyst Mireille, for believing Earth before anyone else did. For seeing the truth." They ran. Back through the passages, past the dying organisms, to the waiting ship. Yonji pushed the engines to maximum as soon as everyone was aboard. Behind them, in the core chamber, Dr. Jinho made final adjustments to the weapon. He thought about Earth, about the 50 years of preparation, about all the people who had sacrificed everything to reach this moment. He thought about his family, who he had barely seen during 2 decades of research. He hoped they'd understand why this mattered. He activated the weapon. "This is for everyone who died waiting for salvation," he whispered. "This is for everyone who will live because we stopped it here." The quantum cascade began. Reality itself started to unravel inside the Nexus. The effect spread exponentially, eating through the organic structure, collapsing the biocomputational matrix. The Nexus began to scream, a sound transmitted on every frequency. Throughout the galaxy, every swarm ship stopped. Their connection to the controlling intelligence severed. They floated dead in space, biological automatons without a brain to guide them. "They've stopped moving," Taijin reported in disbelief. "All of them. They're just drifting." "Target the dead ships," Giwan ordered. "I want every single swarm organism destroyed. No survivors, no possibility of regeneration." The combined fleet turned their weapons on the helpless swarm vessels. It took hours to finish the job, but when it was done, the swarm was extinct. Eliminated completely from the galaxy, Captain Yunji turned to the indomitable Dawn. She stood before Admiral Juwan and reported, "Mission accomplished, Admiral. Dr. Ginho. He didn't make it." Giwan closed her eyes briefly. He knew the risks. He knew what was required. Earth will honor his sacrifice. 3 months later, the Galactic Council reconvened. Earth's seat was no longer questioned. Ambassador Salmon stood before the assembly and proposed sweeping reforms. Shared military command. Integrated.